That's the wrong one. I cannot wait to see what happens. Okay, anyway. I'm in the stream now. Why is it not showing up? There it is. All right. Good afternoon, folks. It is time to continue our discussion on SQL. Oh no, I forgot Replit hasn't been working. So we may take a look at how to set up XAMPP today. Yep, it's still broken. Okay. So this is something that we would eventually get to anyway, but now is a good time to start it. The end goal project for this class is to implement a database, a website that can use a database, and we need to know SQL for that, but there's a lot of setup we can do. We're going to use something called XAMPP, XAMPP. Oh yeah, this is my new computer. I don't have that yet. So I can show you the whole process of installing it. So I'm going to get XAMPP. I'm using a Windows machine, so I'll get XAMPP for Windows. Looks like I have a few audience members here. How are you doing today? Send the downloads. Man, I remember when 155 megabytes would take like 10 minutes. And then before that, it would take like days. So download it, install it. And you know, if you're watching this right now, or you're watching the recording, I recommend watching this through first, at least. Please avoid to install XAMPP or deactivate with msconfig. Okay, we'll see. This thing's kind of old, so I don't need FileZilla. I don't need Mercury Mail Server or Tomcat. Don't need Perl. I don't need Webalizer or fake SendMail. What we need is MySQL and Apache. Apache will be our virtual web server that will be running on our machine, and we'll have no communication with the outside. It's just for testing. And MySQL is another form of SQL besides what we're using in SQLite, which is what we were using on Replit. PHP is the programming language that this database, PHP, my admin right here, is the database management system we're going to use, and it's built on PHP, which is a web scripting language that is still popular due to a lot of large things using it, like there's an e-commerce platform called Magento. There is WordPress uses it, so it's still relevant, but I don't think anyone that's using it is happy about that. So we only need those pieces if you care, or you just install everything. I might have to reinstall this if this doesn't work. But here's the thing, hopefully I run into all the normal problems so I can show how to fix them. Or hopefully none of you run into any issues. Make sure you don't, when you're installing software and it asks you install toolbars or it asks you install extra software, always say no to that. Especially if it's like a add-on to a browser, because whoever is including that in their software is probably getting some kind of a kickback. But if you install like an add-on in your browser, it may be, not dangerous when you download it, but it may update immediately, and who knows what it's going to add. So you always run that risk anyway, downloading software. It's called a Trojan virus. The people distributing the software may not even realize it's in there. So you can fast forward through this part until the bar is at the end. So close. Notice they didn't put a % on there because there's so many install bars and loading bars that stop at I don't want this to communicate on any networks, because I'm only going to use it inside. Okay, block some features of this app. Let's see what happens if I cancel that. Okay, do you want to start the control panel now? Sure. Used to have to always restart the computer after you've installed things. All right, here's the moment of truth. So from the control panel, you have a couple of options here. If you only installed the two things we need, which are Apache, so that's a web server that will allow us to communicate back and forth from a web server local on our machine, which is how you would test using a database on a website. All right, and MySQL is going to handle creating the database, storing it, the overhead stuff, and handle the communications. Okay, so I want to start that. It doesn't need any access to outside networks. We'll start Apache. All right, and then it operates on port 80 and 443. And I don't think I have. Do computers just come with Skype now? Oh, they do. But it's not running. It's really hard. It's really hard to find the way to turn off Skype on your computer so it doesn't run on startup. And when you try to close it, it just goes to the taskbar. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about Skype is I think it either does or used to or sometimes uses the same port that you need to communicate with the web server. So what ports does Skype use? For Skype to work correctly, the following ports need to be open in your firewall right here. 443, which is the port for secure browser communication, I believe. Port 80 and 443 are ports generally associated with the internet. 443 HTTPS. That is HTTP is how you download websites. The S means it's a secure, encrypted connection, or at least they have a certificate that shows that they're following security standards. And then port 80, that's what you use if you ever see a website and it says HTTP, it's using port 80. If you're using a website and it says HTTPS, what is this one using? On this Google one, it's using HTTPS, so I know my information going between the server is encrypted and my computer. All right, anyway, so apparently whoever decided that Skype is going to use this port causes a lot of problems for this. So anyway, it would stop Apache from going green here. If anybody has that problem, all you have to do is get rid of Skype, disable Skype. If you like Skype and you use it, you can also change the port that's used in either Skype or here. So these servers have settings that are just text files. And so like if I want to change the settings for my Apache web server, I have all of these files. So here's conf is config. So if I go to here, we have this file. Anywhere where you see the pound sign is not code. Here, let's see. There's a lot here, right? So we do Control F. We look for port. Oh, it's not in here. Okay. And let's go to, oh, is it under admin? No. It is under config. Maybe it's this one. Maybe it's this one. Okay. Nope, it's one of these config files. So just what I'm going to do is I go in one and I search for port. Oh, there we go. And so here we have, it's saying use listen on 443. So that sets the web server to listen on 443, which is the secure connection. So it's probably better to change Skype. I don't even know if you can do that or not. Still, just if you have that issue where you want to keep Skype and you need to use this, you can either talk to me and we can figure it out, or you could use the school VM, because I don't think it has Skype on there. In the Lakeland IT Pathways VM has XAMPP already installed. So as a, if you have a Chromebook or you have, I'm not sure, I think I've had students successfully use this on a Mac. So if you need help with that too, it's usually some specialized way you have to do it that's going to be really difficult to figure out unless you're very tech savvy. And not everyone in this class is. So make sure you ask me for help if something's happening that you're not sure. Okay. Anyway, we got this running, and once you have them both on, the quickest way here to get to what we need is hitting admin next to MySQL. That's going to open PHP MyAdmin. Okay, and notice it's just a web page built with PHP. So if I check, I have an app in Chrome called Wappalizer, and it detects what kind of technologies are being used on the on the web page. And so programming languages, PHP, All right, and so this is just a web page generated in PHP. I think the version of XAMPP that's on the VMs is maybe older than this, and so some things are slightly different, but it's just cosmetic differences. And like this database over here, it might be slightly different how you add databases. Anyway, this thing on the left, talking like you guys already know what this is. All right, these are the databases that you have. And well, you know, we've talked about this already. You have a database, that's our highest structure. Inside of that we have tables, right? And then inside of there we have fields. Excuse me. So this is showing the databases. Excuse me. And so let's say I want to make a new database, right? So we just click new here, and this has a graphical user interface that you can use. So we'll say cheater way, because this doesn't teach you about databases. This just makes it way easier to use for people that don't know what they're doing. Okay, but we know what we're doing because we just spent half a semester on design. And so now that I'm inside this blank database, it says there's no tables. Make a table. So anyway, we don't want to do this. We want to do it the good way. So if you ever need to delete, everything is protected so that you don't make mistakes. So for example, I want to get rid of this database I created. I have to go over here to more. No. Okay, I'm not used to having a screen this wide. You go to operations, and you can run the drop command here. I think it's limited to only allowing you to click it here. You can't run it through this because of security reasons. Because you know what happens when you delete a database? You lose all the data. And so if this happens on accident, you could be in a lot of trouble in a work situation if there's no backups. All right, so now that database is gone. Let's do it the right way. So you're inside, you're just inside PHPMyAdmin. I want to create a new database. We're going to use SQL to do that, obviously. So we hit SQL, and now we can type our create database command, create database. And we didn't have to do this in SQLite, because I think SQLite just assumes you have one database. At least the one on Replit does. So we just do create database, and we can give it a name. So we'll call this one fruit sales, semicolon. So SQL commands have a semicolon. I think we saw that already in SQLite. Okay, and then you have to go down and hit go to run the query, and then it says check mark, it's happy. It does say return an empty result set, so every SQL command returns a table. And so in this case, it returned nothing. There was nothing to build a table, so there were no rows returned because it just did something in the background. Okay, and now we have fruit sales database. Okay, so we could add some tables in there using the graphical user interface. Don't do that, right? Otherwise you're not going to learn the SQL. We select the correct database first. Always make sure you're selected the right database on the left, and then go to SQL. Otherwise it won't know which database to run that on, run your query on. And so if you guys remember, let me zoom in here. How do I create a table? Well, you create table, give it a name. I'll make a table called fruits. And we need to provide the fields. And let's have a int. No, we provide the name first in this case. So ID, and we'll make it an int. So remember, that's our numeric data type. And we have to have ID as an int if we want to use auto increment, which we talked about last time. Auto increment. Alright. And then what am I forgetting here? You probably set this up differently in MySQL. Auto increment MySQL. So in this class, we're going to work with SQLite. We're going to work with MySQL. There are other databases that are used on the web. There's PostgreSQL, and there is MongoDB, which is not a relational database. It's a document database. I have an article in the class if you're interested in understanding the difference between the two. We'll probably talk about it when we get there. The reason to mention it is you might encounter it. All right, here we go. It's auto underscore increment. There we go. Remembering all the commands can be difficult, but understanding how to find them makes it a lot easier. So we have id int auto increment, and then I put a comma because I'm going to put another one here. Let's go name, and then our alphanumeric data type is varchar, and if you don't give it a length, it's going to go max to 255. So we'll give fruit names 20 characters. Okay, and then we will put a field for flavor. Sure. 20 characters. All right, so that will create a table. Okay, so you type your SQL, and then unfortunately you have to go all the way down here. So this is like Canvas, where the button to submit the assignment is in the top right. So you put everything in down here, you know, down through it, and then you have to go to the top right or whatever to submit it. So here we had to go to the bottom right. So we finish here, and then you're looking here, but the thing is down here. So what did I do wrong? Incorrect table definition. There can only be one auto column. Oh, it must be defined as a key. Okay. So we can do, in MySQL, you specify primary key by going primary key. And then in parentheses, you can put the field name. I think that'll work. And so here's another thing. If you type your query wrong, it will tell you the error down here, and then it keeps it up here. When you're working with this tool, actually if you're doing this or using SQLite, I highly recommend you have a text editor open. Don't use Word because it's going to insert characters that it won't be able to interpret. Use either Notepad, Notepad++, or Visual Studio Code. Anything that's a text editor. There's different ones on Mac, like Text Wrangler. Brackets is a really good one. I think, no, Sublime Text. I think that's a good one for Mac. Okay. And always write your queries, or before you move on, copy them into here, because you don't want to have to type all this again every time, right? And so now I can copy and paste it out of here if I need. So save this as queries. And so like if you were writing queries for a specific assignment, you would probably label this something more specific. Don't just name them all the files queries, or you won't be able to find them. Okay, let's see if this works. I know, all right, yes, green check mark, that's good. And now if we look at the database on the side, we see the name of the database, and then here's the hierarchy. It has tables. These are our tables. So I can select the fruit table, and here are the fields. I know there's a ton of stuff floating all around here. You can ignore everything except what I'm talking about. I know it's hard, but you'll learn where to look. Okay. We have ID, name, and flavor, but we haven't inserted any data yet, so let's insert a row. And how do we do that? Insert into the name of the table, fruits, and then we specify what values we want inside of parentheses. So values, parentheses, and since we have an auto increment, we actually have to include the name. We're not going to put in 3 values. We want the database to auto increment the ID field, so we're not providing that. So we have to tell it when we're inserting into the fruits table which fields we're inserting into and in which order. So we want name and flavor. And so let's insert apple. And if you're inserting alphanumeric data, remember you have to have double quotes around it so that SQL doesn't think you're referencing something else. This is the literal combination of the characters APPLE in this order. That's what I want inserted as the value. And then for the flavor, we'll put sweet. And we'll put golden delicious apple, because those are primarily sweet. I like my apples, lots of different types of apples. Okay. Semicolon. Always put a semicolon after each command. And so I have it saved in here, Control S to save. So if I mess it up or lose it inside of this, inside of phpMyAdmin, I can always grab it again and I don't have to retype it from scratch. Okay, so make sure you have the right database selected. And when you hit SQL, it's going to write this kind of default command that this is the command to pull all the records from the table. Whoops. Actually, I do want that. So, you know, the way we've been writing it looks like this. Just makes it easier to read. Okay. Look at this, where 1. What does that mean? So this is just saying 1 represents true, 0 represents false. So this is just nonsense. He's going to do all the fields, or I'm sorry, all of the records. Remember, those are the rows. Okay. Putting tick marks around this. That's how you would denote if you had spaces in the table name. Don't put spaces in your table name. Don't put spaces in your field names. Spaces are bad for identifying names in programming. You should get used to naming all your files without spaces. Get used to naming all of your variables, all of your tables, databases. Do not put spaces in there because it just creates a problem that you have to deal with every time you want to work with it. Okay. Anyway, there's nothing in there, so it's pointless to run. Let's add something in. So here I'm going to insert into the fruits table, into the name and flavor fields, golden delicious apple into the name field, sweet into the flavor field. And let's see if it yells at me. Nope, it's happy. Alright, and then inserted row. And it used the ID of 1, because remember we had auto increment, so it's going to start at 1. And now you can either go to SQL and run the select star from fruits. That gets you to the table. Down here, again, you have to just ignore all of this bloat around it. Here are the fields. ID is 1, name is golden delicious app. Why did it cut off at app? and then flavor is sweet. Why did this not say golden delicious apple? Let's look back at what we've done so far. So in the name, we've limited it to 20 characters, including spaces. And so this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So it didn't have enough space because I didn't think ahead that I would use such a long name. So we will need to change that. All right, and so because we're just testing, the simplest way to do that is just delete the table and recreate it, because to recreate it we just have to run this query since we saved it in our notepad. We just paste it in, it'll come right back. But how do we get rid of it? So we go to SQL, and the command is drop table fruit. All right, and again, whenever you see the word drop or delete in SQL, you should always double check that you're doing things right, because if you don't have backups, the data will be gone. In this case, we don't have any important data in here, and we're just going to be creating it on the fly every time we need it until we get to the end where we're implementing a database. And then see, it's even saying, do you really want to execute drop table fruits? Because it knows I'm going to lose the data. But I don't care at this point. And now I want to go back into the fruit sales database, go to SQL, and since I have semicolons after both these commands, I can just copy both right in. It'll run both, and I've error checked them already. So create the table and add in that one record, and we can see if it fits now. Wait, I didn't change the number, did I? Close one. Let's go 40. Because if you're using, like, you know, apple, banana, orange, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're like mandarin oranges or tangerines or ruby red grapefruit, you know, those names can get longer. Okay, so let's change it to 40 in here. If you change it in, I see people do this all the time in the in-person class. They'll change the query in here and forget to save it back to their notepad. So I did it here, and then I thought about all the times I've seen people do that, and I thought, okay, I better go back and change it here. Change it here first, and then copy it in. Unless you're trying to fix an error in here, because once you get it right, look what happens. Unless you know to click here, you won't get that. Or, you know, if it works, you may forget to copy it out, and you're like, oh, I just want to see what's in this fruits table. And so I didn't show you this before. If you click on the name of the table over here, look, it automatically runs this query. Okay, so do not forget how to print out the table, because that's going to be on the test for sure. It's really easy to just click this and think, okay, I'm opening this table here. You're not. You're running this command. Okay, so I'm not going to make you type this command every time. How would I, right? But look at it and make sure you understand that you're not just using this software to open the table. You're running this command, select star from fruits, you're feeding it into the database, the MySQL database, and it is software, database management software, and it is spitting back out this record. right? You're giving it a command, it's spitting it out. You're not just like opening a file. Have I said that enough? Okay, so there we go. Now it fits in there. Golden Delicious Apple, ID of 1, sweet. Okay, and let's go ahead and add some more in here. So remember, if you want multiple values, you can just separate the value collections by putting a comma between them. So let's go banana, and bananas should be sweet. You don't want a spicy banana, you don't want a bitter banana, you don't want a sour banana. Okay, let's do lemon. That's going to be sour. Oh, and you know, I'm just typing these over there, but you're going to want to put them like this so you can see them easier. It doesn't need to be this way for SQL. It needs to be this way so you can read it. Lemons, you want a lemon to be sour. If it's not sour, something wrong with that lemon. Okay, that's enough. All right, and now I can run this. If I just run this, what's going to happen? Well, let's see. So I want to insert into the fruits table these values. But I've already inserted Golden Delicious Apple and Sweet, that record. Okay, and so it says inserted 3 rows. All right. Whoops. Yeah, I want to select star from fruits so I can see the table. Okay, so now I have 2 Golden Delicious Apple records, and that's okay because they have different primary keys, but it's not okay because I don't need 2 of those. So we could make the name field unique to prevent that, but we have it in there now, so we need to get rid of it first. So how do you do that? So we looked at how to create a table, how to insert values into the table, how to pull the data out using a select statement, but now how do I get rid of records? And so you only ever want to delete records that were inserted in error. Okay? You do not want to delete records that actually represent something, because if they are foreign keys in another table, you can create problems. And you know, a database is a record of information that's been collected. You don't delete things from it. You may archive them later, but you don't ever delete records that were entered in correctly. So like, let's say, what could it be? Where would you delete a record? Oh, okay. Let's say you had an employee. You hired an employee, and so you put them in the employees table. All right. And they move on to a new job. Are you going to delete that employee because they're not at the job anymore? Well, what if you have information about them in the database that you may need in the future? If you delete the record, then you'll have to delete all the information about them. So you could have a field that's marked, you know, currently employed here or whatever, and you just set that to no, and then when you pull out a list of employees, you can just have it check only pull the employees that are currently employed. Okay, that way you don't lose that data if you need it later. So remember, you're only ever going to delete records. You should only be deleting records that were inserted in error, or if they've been archived somewhere else, then you can delete them. But you don't want to lose data. Okay, anyway, how do I do it? We do delete from fruits. And I'm going to do it a very wrong way, okay? delete from fruits. What do you think that's going to do? Okay. So I'm going to do delete from fruits. And again, since I'm deleting something which you should not be doing very often in the real world, in this class we're going to do it all the time, it's going to warn you. It's like, are you sure you want to do that? Do you really know what you're doing? Okay, we do. And it says, uh-oh, 4 rows affected. What happened? Go back to the table. All the records are gone. So, it's very easy to accidentally do this due to a typo, a misplaced semicolon. If you just put delete from fruits or delete from any table, that's how you delete all the records. So it's the command for deleting all the records is easier than the command for deleting a specific record, which is kind of unfortunate, but you just don't do that. So how do you do it so that you only get rid of one record? So I'm going to run this command twice to put in a bunch of duplicates to simulate if I was a novice, self-taught SQL person. All right. So somehow I've written software or not put in correct database checks that will allow me to put in multiple records that shouldn't be in there. So, I've got 3 extra records in here. I should probably retain the earlier ones and get rid of the extra ones that were added later. So, how can I delete these 3? So, if you remember, if I only want to pull certain records from a table, remember with select, you're selecting which fields you want. And so here I'm selecting, if you use asterisks, that's all the fields. You tell it which table you want. And if I only want a certain set of records, I have to apply a filter using where. And we'll do where. I'll open this because now I forgot what number it was. The correct records are 5, 6, and 7. The incorrect ones are 8, 9, 10. Or the ones we want to remove are 8, 9, and 10. So I can write a query that will delete those 3. What would that look like? Well, first, before you write the delete query, you should write a query that can find those 3 records. Because that way, when you create your delete statement, you're only grabbing the ones you actually want to delete. And so if you're selecting it, you're not deleting it, and you can see the output. So this is if I had delete from fruits, it's going to delete all these, because here's select star from fruits. It's selecting all. So I want to write a query that will only select those 3 that have an ID of 8, 9, and 10. And so since we have a range, I could do where ID equals 1, or I'm sorry, my short-term memory is just shot for some reason. 8, 9, 10, right, starting at 8, so where ID equals 8, and ID equals 9, and ID equals 10. That would work. Or if I want to be fancier, I could do where ID is greater than 7. So if I do that, select star from fruits where ID is greater than 7. I'm not deleting it yet. I want to test this because in this case, if there were more records above 10, I would be deleting things I don't want to delete. But we'll double check. These are the records that were returned from that query. Those are the ones I want to delete. So we can just change the query here. And again, I'm not copying it in here, which I should be doing. Well, you don't need to copy this one unless you want an example. Okay, so select from fruits where ID is greater than 7. So we just replace select with delete here. Delete from fruits where ID is greater than 7. And simulate query. Okay. 3 rows affected. Let's go back, pull what's left. Okay, now we have only our 3 there. All right, what else? What else? I feel like I was talking about something else here. Well, I haven't even opened the PowerPoint yet. Let's take a look at that. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I absolutely love this subject, by the way. In case you were worried about it. All right, so creating a database, creating a table. Since we are going to be restructuring our database, we want to make sure we save all of the setup SQL for it. And if you try to create a table or a database when it already exists, so let's go SQL, create database fruits. It will say, oh, it's called fruit sales. Well, it'll say it's fine because I didn't remember the name of the database. So, oh, well, here's another. This is hard to find. How do I get rid of it? Because you could do, or the way you would normally do it, if I want to get, now I want to get rid of this fruits database. I'm going to do drop database fruits to get rid of not this fruits table, but this fruits database. So drop database fruits. Go. Oh, okay. It doesn't have that protection anymore. Okay, so you can use that. Used to be that it wouldn't let you run the command unless you clicked on that link that I showed you earlier. So good. I'm glad we can do that now. It may be blocked on the VM version, so you might have to click the link. You can look back in the video for how to do that. Did it really early on. Okay. Where am I? Oh, I'm looking for this. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. I hope I didn't just mess up the audio. If you're in the chat and you're listening and it sounds terrible, well, I'll just check over here. All right, sounds fine now. All right, cool. What were we doing? We're doing, oh yeah, I'm showing you this create database if not exists thing. So anyway, let's do it right this time. I'm going to try to create a database that already exists. So create database fruit sales. So annoying that that's down there. You can tell this is old, huh? Error. Can't create database fruit sales. Database exists. Sometimes these errors are useful or easy to understand, right? So don't ignore them. Make sure you read it, understand what's wrong, and fix it. Because the more of these that you can read and understand the problem, the faster you'll be able to fix errors. Okay, and that goes for any programming language, or you know, that's how a doctor diagnoses people. They look for things that are wrong, and then they know, you know, symptoms, and they can determine what is causing those. Okay, You're narrowing down the problem. Instead of just typing things trial and error. That'll waste you a lot of time. This stuff takes time to learn and practice. It takes more practice than it does reading. You have to read it once to know how to do it, or listen to me once, and then you just need to do it like 100 times. Not literally. Well, you should do it 100 times, but I'm not going to make you do that. Okay, so we can't run this command. And so, you know, if I'm creating an SQL file to create this database, and I want to be able to use it anywhere where I'm using MySQL, I would want to start with creating the database, and then you would do this. You tell it to run the rest of the commands on that database. You put use and then the name of the database. All right, so I want to be able to just run all of this and quickly whip up that database. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the existing one again. I'll use the button this time. So under operations, there is drop. Okay. Even though I don't know why I'm showing that. I don't want you guys to do that. I want you to use commands. Oh, I guess in case it doesn't let you. Okay. So I have that database is gone. And now I can just, let's go and save this. I'm going to copy all of what I've written. Make sure there's a semicolon at the end of each command. And I can just put that in here and go. And then it runs all those commands. Now I have the database set up, and inside of there it built this table, and then it inserted these records. So because I've saved this stuff, I don't have to type it all again. Here's the problem. Let's say I want to run this again because I'm adding a new field to fruits, call price. All right, so I'm making it an int. Okay. So if I try to, I say, okay, I want this to update so that fruits has that new field. I could go in and try to run this again, but you guys already know what the problem is going to be, right? I can't create the same database. Let's make sure it says that. Database already exists. It can't do the rest because it doesn't, it's going to stop as soon as it gets an error, first of all. But then it can't do the rest of this because, you know, fruits is already a table, so it can't create that. It can insert these records, but it's not going to get that far because there's an error. Okay. So that's why we have this here. Create database if not exists. This is adding a little bit of logic here that says you don't just skip this step. If the database already exists, don't create it. Just use what's already there. Okay, so we can put if not exists. Create database if not exists. And then we can select this. And we can run this in here. And now we'll see if it gets down to everything else, or if there's another error. All right. Cannot create table fruits. It already exists. Oh no. So we can use the same thing here. Create table if not exists. But here's the thing. If we keep doing this, it's never gonna, you know, let's say I add another field, color. 45. Okay. If I put create table if not exists, it's not going to overwrite the table that I have in there, right? So we couldn't do this before because it wouldn't let me run the drop command. All we have to do for this is we don't need this anymore if not exists. It's useful to know that it's there, but we won't need that there, or we don't need it here. Because what we need is, we already know a way that'll just, to wipe it out, we can just do drop database fruit sales. So what will that first command do? Oh, well, it'll give us an error if the database doesn't exist. So we can do if exists. There, that'll prevent a problem down the line. And so this is basically clear everything, and then we have the code down here to set everything back up. Okay, and we'll see. This will create a new problem for us because we added a bunch of fields, but we didn't add the values. So let's go back to SQL. Run this. Go. Now, from so drop database if exists fruit sales. So it deleted it, and then it recreated it. So deleting it just emptied out all the data, all the tables and all the data, so that they can be remade if I make changes in the SQL. And I added price and color, but I was inserting only these two fields, golden delicious, or I'm sorry, name and flavor. So what happened to these fields? They now contain null, which means a lack of a value. And it can cause problems in certain situations that we just can avoid by doing something else. Okay, we did talk about, what did we talk about? Constraints, that's what we were talking about. So, not null constraint. So if we want certain fields to not be able to be null, we can set not null as a, so let's say we don't want price. We don't want something in there, especially in numeric data that you're going to use in equations. You never want that to be null, or else any formula that includes a null value will evaluate to null. It's like a black hole. It just sucks everything in. And it does that because that's what it's programmed to do. So unless you want your formulas to always calculate out to null, just make sure you don't ever get null in there. And we can do that by putting not null after price. Okay, but now we've fundamentally changed this table, so we have to recreate everything. But it's as easy as copying the SQL here. And then we go up here to SQL, copy it in, hit go, and it'll be updated. But it should give us an error when we try to do the insert. So it says price doesn't have a default value. Let's see what it put in there. So it knew it was numeric. So I guess the default value for default of a numeric data type is 0. But we're selling fruit. We don't want, someone buys 7 kinds of fruit and we're just scanning them and calculating the total, and we can't do it in our head. We're using computer or scanner or something. If we accidentally have something set to 0, we're going to be giving away fruit on accident. So we don't want that either. So at a minimum, let's put a default value of 1. How do we do that? Well, let's go down to default. Okay. You just put after the name and data type the word default and then a value. So that's easy. So we want price to be not null and to have a default value of 1. Let's see if that works. So save it, copy everything. Again, we've made a fundamental change to the database. And so go back, copy that in to reset it up again. Okay, and then we didn't get that warning now because we have a default value, so it's not falling back. And since we didn't insert values, it's going to set it to 1. Okay, maybe that's too low, but it's better than nothing, right? All right. If you want it to be higher, you can set it higher. All right. So here we don't have values for color, and you know, this probably isn't very important. this may be like, okay, you have a new fruit sales intern, okay, who needs some help identifying which fruit is which. So you can help them out by telling them the color, I guess. Wyatt, very good question. There is an append ability, and you would use that in the real world to make changes to the database, which again is a very hard decision to come to and a very expensive one in the case of a large database. Because in that case, you don't want to delete it and recreate it, because if it has millions of records, it's going to take way too long. So if I just want to add a field to my table, I can run a command to do that. And so we'll definitely take a look at that right after. No, I think we can do it now. I don't think I was talking about anything. Was I? I was talking about something very unrelated to this. Okay. So, what I was going to say is, if it has a null in here, I guess that's an invisible fruit, right? So, so the intern is going to use the flavor and the color to determine what fruit it is, but that is going to require him to bite into it. So we don't want that. So what else can we tell him? Let's go shape. So let's add a shape field. And you know what? I don't want to, let's say we have a billion fruit records. All right. I don't want to delete that and recreate it. It's going to take a month probably with my computer. All right. And that entire time, no one's going to be able to use the database. Okay. So we can use something called the alter table command. And we're altering the fruits table. Got the syntax in here. Here we go. Alter table, add. So you tell it the table, you tell it and this allows you to just, you should recognize this from the create table statement. It just lets you add a field. Now, let's look at what happens if I add a field this way. What value do you think that field is going to have if I do this? We're going to alter the table fruits. So when you're changing tables in a database that's already full of information, you're probably going to really consider whether it's worth it. A lot of times you have to, so you try to minimize the cost of that. So deleting it and recreating it would be really expensive, but it's just faster in the class to do that. Though I will test you on this query also on how to add it. So here we're adding a field called shape. and we'll give it 30 characters. Because last time I used a lower number, I got burnt. Oh, and I'll go ahead and save this command in here. And I will divide it into a new section here. And so I'll put a little comment here that says end table setup. And so these are commands that I'm not going to run if I'm setting this up. That's how I choose to organize it. And I'm showing you this because unless you can if you come up with a better way to organize this, definitely tell me. But this is going to help you the most if you do it this way. Anytime you run a query, throw it on a database. You're going to have to be writing queries for the homework, so this is how you should do it. I think the submission might be a text box. It might be a text box or upload. If you have the file, you can just send me the file, right? But I need to know where the table setup is, if you're supposed to create a table, and the command's down here. Or if you want help solving a problem, you can just send me the file and I can run it on my database and figure out the error. I want you guys to stop emailing me things like, I need help on exercise 6, or I need help on chapter 2, because I'm going to have to send you an email that says, what do you need help with? And that might take a day, and then you might take a day to answer me back, when you could have just said, I need help on chapter 2 because I can't do the first exercise. Here's what I have tried. If you haven't tried anything, I'm going to say watch the video. But if you still can't figure it out, anyone who's asked me for help can tell you I will bend over backwards to help you. But I can't do it if you don't give me the information. So always when you're sending an email to an instructor about specific coursework, send as many details as you can. I love it. I want more details. You can always you never send enough. If it's about why you're, in my courses, if it's why you have, work to turn in late, or why you are missing, you need time off to do something, you don't have to go into all that much detail. Okay? You could just say, hey, I'm sick. I need a week on this. And I'll say, okay, or I'll say no. Or if I want more details, I'll ask. In that case, it's probably better to give me fewer details, because I don't want to read a long excuse. I don't need to read a long excuse. I will just assume that you're not lying to me, because I trust you guys and gals. Okay. I need to eat something. I'm getting all hangry. Okay. If you're watching this video right now, you're awesome. You're watching the live stream while it's going, because there are definitely more than 2 people in this class. Some people can't watch them live because they have jobs or kids, and that's totally fine. That's why I record these. Okay. I'm like trying not to alienate students. Interact with me. You'll know I'm very lenient and helpful. Thank you. Anyway, I'm trying to build suspense up for this thing Wyatt asked me for. Okay. So I was going to say, what do you think the data is going to be in there? It probably shouldn't be a surprise to you, because if I'm just making a shapes field, or a shape field, all the computer knows is the name and the data type. It's not going to know the shape of fruit. We're getting there, though. If you have a smart assistant at home, ask it what the shape of banana is and see what it says. We might be there. All right, well, let's look at the table. Null so now let's say I had 1,000,000 records. I've just inserted 1,000,000 null fields in there. And so someone is going to have to go through and put all the shapes in there. So before you would run the query, you would have that information prepared and have a query that will go in and do this. For example, insert into fruits. Is that what I called it? Yeah, fruits. And we only want to change the shape field, so we'll do that. And this is actually going to require something advanced, I think. Insert into where. So we'll talk about this in a later chapter. Insert into select, so I'm not going to go over it right now. But it basically allows you to specify which fields need what inserted. So for example, if I wanted to insert some fruits are going to have similar shapes, right? And it's funny because, like, what shape is an orange? Okay, it's a sphere, or you can call it a circle. What is a banana? It's kind of a crescent shape. But what about a pear? It's pear-shaped, right? Anyway, you're probably not going to be putting shapes of fruit in, but in the real world. So I'm going to save this so I know where to start next time. I'm actually going to save this in a place I won't lose it. It's good to be organized. I'm done talking about course stuff, or the class stuff, so if you have questions, ask them now while I'm doing this finishing up. I'm going to give you a little time to ask. That was a really good question, by the way, Wyatt. I don't know if you knew the answer to that or not, but it was good to bring that up. We'll look at the other ways to modify and alter fields. Oh. Okay. We'll call this fruit sales setup. And you can just save it as a text file. And okay, I'm just going to keep going forever if I don't stop. So you guys have a good day, and I'll see you next week. Please, if you need help, ask. Email me or send me a message in Canvas. All right. Have a good night, folks.